All right, let's shift focus now and delve into a contentious issue, at least in the alcohol sector, and it's gripping that sector and people concerned with tax collection and the likes in the country. The proposed changes to alcohol taxation and their far-reaching implications. The National Treasury's plan to increase excise duties, potentially shifting to an alcohol content-based system, aims to curb the severe societal and health burdens associated with alcohol abuse. The move is championed by public health advocates who point to alarming statistics, such as the Road Traffic Management Corporation's finding that approximately 27% of all road fatalities in the country are linked one way or another to the abuse of alcohol, a figure that tragically spikes during holiday seasons. Beyond the roads, alcohol abuse is also a significant contributor to violence, suicide, and domestic instability, imposing substantial costs on the nation's healthcare and welfare systems. However, these proposed tax hikes have ignited strong opposition from the alcohol industry, particularly from sectors like South Africa Wine. Industry leaders argue that such increases, especially the projected 72% weighted average rise for many wines under the new framework, threaten the sustainability and global competitiveness of a sector that contributes some 56 billion rand to the GDP of the country and supports over 270,000 jobs. Right, a lot that I've said in that introduction. Let's pick it up and simplify it for you. Sibani Mngadi is Corporate Relations Director at Diageo SA and joins us now to pick up on that conversation. Good afternoon to you, Sibani. It's a long introduction that I made there and somewhat complex, but what in essence are we talking about here? Someone listening who's not familiar with the goings-on of the current debate will say excise duty is adjusted upwards each and every year, almost without fail, in the Minister of Finance's speech. What's different this time that has got us to be debating this issue so vociferously?
Yeah, thank you very much, Julius, for the opportunity. The excise tax, it works on the particular framework. They will ordinarily, Treasury will have targets at which they adjust the tax over time, accommodating the inflation to get to that target. So every 10 years, we kind of get to this stage where we need to review those targets and the framework as it is and look at what has happened to the industry over the past 10 years and then work out whether these policy interventions are effective or not and whether they can be adjusted. In this case, what has clearly come out through is that over the past 10 years, particularly spirits increases have been increased quite significantly to an extent that there is a big gap where we find that illicit traders are using that opportunity. They can discount a spirit product by up to 50% because of the tax burden that is in there. And then there are also other kind of more administrative issues that we would like to deal with. For instance, unlike the other taxes where they get implemented, the announcement is made by the minister at the parliament, and then it gets implemented on the 1st of April, let's say VAT or fuel levy. In our case, we implement it the same day, and which means really practically in a business, we need to adjust prices and change payment systems to be able to adapt and be compliant at the same time. So those are the things that we are trying to work on, and then to look at whether also the tax itself, is it equitable across all categories. Of course, we know that if the issue is about dealing with the negative impact of alcohol, it means that we need to deal with the substance that is influencing the alcohol, the behavior of people, irrespective of whether it comes from spirits or beer or wine. In that case, we would like to see some degree of equity in the spread of tax burden between the three categories.
Yeah, and in a moment, I'll bring in Oupa Mthombeni, who is president of the concerned Tshwane Liquor Traders Association. But I want to stick with you for a moment, Sibani, and talk about what's our approach at the moment in terms of determining at what level to tax what category of alcohol beverage? Because it's not just blanket. We're not talking alcohol. We're talking different categories of alcohol as well as their absolute alcohol content. How do those weigh in the conversation?
Yeah, as things stands now, the spirit sector, for when you calculate by pure alcohol, per liter of alcohol, we are paying about 292. And then beer pays about 142, which is then what is calculated as a pure alcohol basis. And then wine is calculated slightly differently. It's per liter of the product, irrespective of the ABV level, and that is at 5.90 cents. So that's kind of the discussion where it is in terms of how those segmentations play out. So when you have an increase like we are showing now of a 6.7%, because the base is different, spirit is high, beer is in the middle, wine is at the bottom, then that 6.7% has different implications for different categories. For instance, wine, the spirit now is currently at 94 rands. When you buy a 750 ml bottle of whatever brandy or vodka, the 95 rand of what you pay goes to government. Then if you apply what was applied last year, 6%, 6.7% increase, it means that tax is going over 100 rand for a single bottle of spirit that you are purchasing, which we think it's highly intolerable.
All right. Oupa Mthombeni, let me bring you into this conversation. So you are listening and hearing some of what is being proposed around increasing excise duties on alcoholic beverages, the different categories. And from what I've heard, the impact would be quite high as far as beer is concerned. Just as liquor traders in your area of Tshwane, what do you make of the debate as has been presented as being a debate about trying to curb alcohol-related harms, as well as the abuse of alcohol and its consequences? As I see there that Oupa seems to have disappeared momentarily there, and I apologize for that. I don't know if we still have Oupa. Oupa, are you there? No, we seem to have a problem. So let me continue with you, Sibani, then. As I was saying to Oupa, this is framed as a debate between the clearly demonstrable harms that come with alcohol abuse on the one hand. So that the conversation is framed along those lines, that it's not about revenue collection, it is about reducing alcohol harm in society, the extent to which people 15 years and above engage in episodic binge drinking, and then the subsequent problems that arise, the number of times that alcohol is a factor in road crashes, etc. Surely that's a good thing to be trying to counter that.
Yeah, the starting point for us, excise tax is a well-established measure to we compensate for what is called externality cost of alcohol, just like the same you will have carbon tax on fuels and other things. But you in this case of alcohol, tax is but one element, and it needs to be fair enough for it to allow the business to grow while also modifying the issues of affordability of the product. Alcohol abuse problem can only be addressed in a multi-intervention approach. As you indicated now, road drinking and driving, for instance, the major interventions that have been made around police visibility, screening for alcohol, roadblocks, which we fully support as an industry, either as individual companies or through our collective organizations called aware.org, where we have even donated the vehicles that are used by police to screen for drinking and driving. We believe that that is the approach that we need to take. Underage drinking, for instance, that area you really need to deal with education as well as compliance in terms of access for people under the age to alcohol, and which is what I think most of the tavern owners will be highlighting. So those things need to be implemented together to be able to deal with problem of alcohol abuse. Certainly high taxation on its own, all it does is the heavy drinkers, so people who are dependent on alcohol, will ultimately trade down to cheaper categories of alcohol and ultimately purchase what we call illicit alcohol, which is basically 50% discounted from what legal alcohol is sold at the moment.
All right. Let me try once again to bring in Oupa Mthombeni, president of the concerned Tshwane Liquor Traders Association. Oupa, I believe we've got you now. So just from your vantage point, observing these debates about potentially raising the excise duties on various categories of alcohol. What is your take? How do you see this one playing itself out and its impacts? Will it have the intended impact of reducing the abuse of alcohol and the related harms, or will it have a negative effect as far as your businesses are concerned?
Yeah, good afternoon to all listeners. My name is Oupa Mthombeni. I'm the president of Consensual Liquor Traders Association. You know, there's one thing that we need to understand, that increasing prices, it doesn't go into solve the problem of liquor harm. We as Consensual, we have taken consideration that we need to make sure that every month we go around and make sure that we educate liquor traders to understand that compliance is very important. Why I'm saying this is because we want to try to make sure that liquor traders, they must understand that we don't want to see liquor traders selling liquor to underage. We don't want to see liquor traders selling liquor to somebody who's already intoxicated. We don't want to see liquor traders selling liquor to a pregnant woman. And those are the issues that we are trying to do. But by increasing, it's also going to kill our businesses as liquor traders, you know, and also we want to try to work with the government and law enforcement to minimize this illicit liquor. Because even if they increase, but there is an illicit liquor that is mushrooming around South Africa, whereby people will be running away and go and buy illicit liquor there because of the right liquor is very, very expensive. What do we say to the government? We say, let's sit down and have a strategy of what, trying to educate the community, the liquor traders, to make sure that we reduce the harm of alcohol in our society. The law enforcement also, they must they must do their job by making sure that taverners are closing at time, taverners are operating at the right time, taverners are doing the right thing. Increasing it doesn't going to solve the problem. Let them definitely and 100% sure. I've been selling liquor since 1990 up until today. That will never reduce harm of alcohol to make it more expensive. That will cause more poverty to other houses because of there are people who want to see themselves drinking liquor. So as an association, we say, let us try and work hard together as a government and law enforcement, the community, to try to educate people and reduce alcohol harm.
But Oupa, just sticking with you for a moment, you can understand where government is coming from, because as noble as what you are saying, the behavior by alcohol traders in taverns and establishments like those, as much as you are encouraging for good behavior and adherence to licensing conditions, not selling to underage people, pregnant people, and people who are visibly intoxicated already, etc., such that you reduce the harm. That's not the reality, though. Many traders are irresponsible. So do you understand at least where government is coming from to say, if the industry won't do this by themselves, let's try and make it more expensive? And perhaps that's a lever at which we can pull, hopefully, to change the situation.
No, I agree with you. Many taverners are not obeying the law, but the only thing that we need to do, the government is the one who can make the liquor trade, the law enforcement to do the right thing by making sure all the liquor traders are in the association so that we can educate them to understand the importance of compliance and the importance of not liquor harm to the community. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying they cannot increase, but that is not going to solve the problem of alcohol harm. I don't see it will be. But what I'm saying is to say, they let the government be involved, the law enforcement also. You know, something that worries me is that we disappointed by the law enforcement. You see the subs moving around, but people holding beers on hands on the street, and the law say public drinking is not allowed, but they don't do anything about them. If we can insist and make sure we make the law tough, I think that will also work, and people understand that the law doesn't take any chances when you do the wrong thing.
So stricter law enforcement, I take it. Then let me come back to you, Sibani. Do you share that view? Is this increase in excise duties and perhaps increase above inflation and above the usual adjustments year in, year out, is it a blunt instrument as far as you are concerned, and link that to your concerns around illicit alcohol?
Yes, that's correct. It's a planned intervention that doesn't help. And also, in addition to its bluntness, it's implemented significantly unfairly to the spirit sector, which is where probably the biggest chunk of illicit trade comes in. If we talk about the losses to government as a result of illicit, Euromonitor has given us an indication of around 16 billion being lost from tax leakages as a result of either counterfeits or smuggled alcohol. And then of that 16 billion, it's 11 billion is purely on the side of the spirit sector. And there's a significant part of what we call the sugar fermented beverages, those papsak that are camouflaging themselves as wine, and they get a wine rate, which then is also tax evasion. So that probably needs to be solved. Yes, I agree with Oupa that we need a kind of multiple set of interventions dealing with issues of compliance, dealing with access even into outlets by people under the age or people who are appropriate for entry into their trading hours, and making sure that then there's attention to drinking and driving, because those are the kind of the big problems that we will have. And of course, the safety of drinking spaces, where we would like to make sure that there is no interpersonal violence. I think those are the areas where we need a multiple set of interventions, and tax alone, increasing it above inflation. And this higher than inflation increases, unfortunately, they are also linked to what is the average. It's actually the segment inflation. Whatever is the average price in a sector like beer, wine, or spirit is what drives then the prices to increase in that space. So we would like to keep within inflation, particularly for spirit. We would like to see a freeze until we are able to see some degree of equity and clarity in terms of interventions in relation to illicit interventions.
Lastly, Sibani, let me end it with you. There's a piece that you wrote a couple of days ago, about a week ago, that appeared on the Sunday Times, and you were talking about alcohol tax policy needing urgent reform. What we're talking about now is the current debate, but I suppose what you are talking to is the longer trajectory, the overall heading of our alcohol tax policy. What do you mean that it's due for reform? Is this based on the argument that we continue to see it as, you see it being framed as sin taxes, and this whole thinking towards alcohol in that way? Are you calling for one that sees it as, yes, it may be an indulgence, but at the same time, it is an industry that will exist in the country one way or another, that has its own utility, albeit with its own perils as well?
Yes, my submission is that you listen to budget speeches every year, and it's always dull about how much we have failed to grow even higher than 1% GDP growth every year. But when you get to the announcement around alcohol increases, probably across the House in Parliament, you hear a bit of laughter when this 6.7 increase against inflation of 3.6 are announced. And it's taken for granted as such, and not taking into consideration that this is an industry that's probably in the region of 220 billion contribution to the GDP, and probably about 400 in economic output. It carries along with itself 500,000 people that we support, and a lot more if you apply the multiplier. And it drives even on the export front to some extent of South African wine that get exported into various markets. In Europe, we have a particular space for the South African wine, and so is other regions. And we need to be able to understand this industry for what it is in terms of contribution, positive contribution, while we also address the negative consequences, of course, in terms of consumption and how people will behave and interact, and probably drivers of non-communicable diseases that will come with it. Certainly, we are committed to dealing with that and engaging and working with government in addressing that. But it is a very important sector, major investment that have happened in this sector in terms of acquisition, capital investment at various companies, and it is a it is an industry that needs to be considered positively and understood to be contributing to the economy of this country.
All right, let's leave it there for this afternoon. I've got to thank both of you. That is Sibani Mngadi, who is Corporate Relations Director at Diageo SA, as well as Oupa Mthombeni, who is the President of Concerned Tshwane Liquor Traders Association. Let's see how it unfolds, right, in the coming weeks as we head up to budget and hear whether there's a change in tone and approach as far as alcohol tax policy is concerned, keeping in mind, of course, the very real concerns about alcohol abuse and the attendant harms that come from that.